Okay, I think we're good.
Good.
This is as close as I've come to success.
You're good, Patty.
But we don't go live till 6:30, right?
No, we're going live now. You
So on
ready?
Facebook, you can see everything we're doing right now.
Not Facebook, YouTube.
I mean YouTube, because I have to go potty.
Go ahead.
What?
Run. You've got 10 minutes.
You know what? Just put yourself on stop audio, stop video.
Yeah, at the bottom.
You could just pause yourself until we're ready to start. There we go. All right. I'm going to do a share screen.
Okay.
And then I'm going to broadcast.
Sounds good.
Alexa, how long do you cook chicken breasts in the oven?
Typically, it takes 30 minutes to cook chicken breast.
I have to go take chicken out of the oven in a minute. Can you hear me? Now
I can hear you. Oh, now you just muted it.
okay.
That should be good.
I couldn't hear you.
I had been muted. Sorry.
I changed cups. That was a little obnoxious.
I thought it was inspiring.
Especially with that other background.
Right.
Okay, we have our first attendee who just joined us.
So what are they seeing right now? Do you know?
That's
Right now, they are going to see that blue screen, the Welcome to Schomburg Library Live, and then Linda is speaking, and so she, it'll be her, her face right now, and then Jean, if you were to speak, then you would take over the thumbnail.
it automatically switches, doesn't it? Or
Oh no, you know what? I have the three of us now, and I'm going to stop my video,
okay.
and I'm going to put myself on mute.
But then once you end the share screen, then we'll pop up on the screen.
Yes.
We are live on YouTube while we're waiting, Jean, just so you know.
Great.
All right, well, it is 6:30, and so we are going to start. My name is Patty Smolin. I'm a business librarian at the Schomburg Township District Library, and I want to welcome tonight's presenters, Jean Walters with Home Trust and Linda Dressler with Remax. Thank you again for joining us. I know that we were fortunate to get an overview of the real estate market in the beginning of the year when you came to see us when our building was open. And I think we all agree it was time to do that again. The real estate and lending markets have certainly shifted. And who better to ask except for the two of you to come in and share with us the statistics and what they mean to us. So I want to welcome everyone who has registered for tonight's program. I hope the registration process was fairly easy for you. And certainly want to thank you for still showing interest and participation in our online programs until our building can be open to you. Please know that your library staff is still here for you to answer your questions and to guide you to answers and to provide you with programs like this. My name is Patty Smolin, as I mentioned, and I'm going to just type in my email address to everyone here. Should you have any questions that I can help with on behalf of the library, you are welcome to direct them to me, and I will either answer them to the best of my ability or share them with my colleagues. So I do want to make mention that as a webinar, our attendees do not have video or audio functions. So you are most welcome to use the Q&A feature, which is in the bottom of your toolbar. And if you want to submit your questions that way, the speakers will address them as they can during the presentation. And if they're a little bit more involved, they may hold off until the end of their slides before they address it. So again, I will be participating, but I'm going to turn myself on off, but I will still be here. And thank you both for coming back tonight.
Thank you so
Thanks for
much,
having
Patty, for having us. Good evening, everybody. We know that there are a lot of questions out there with what's going on during the current situation. Just to introduce myself, for those of you who've not met me at the previous library events that we've held, my name is Linda Dressler. I'm with Remax Suburban. My office is right on Roselle Road by Gulf and Roselle. I've been in the real estate field since 2007. So I have been through one of the shifts in the market that we've had most recently, and I learned how to work hard, and I'm still here. So we're here tonight just to give you some guidance on what's going on so that you could get the truth from the professionals and not just read on social media, etc. And my cohort tonight, Jean.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jean Walters. I'm with Home Trust Mortgage. We are also in Schomburg. I have an office in Linda Dressler's Remax office, and then I also have my home office in the Pepsi building on Meacham and Higgins. So we're very local. I've been in the business for a little over 20 years, and I work with people that are looking to purchase their homes, refinance. I work with people's credit to get them to the point where they can purchase if they're not able to purchase right now because of their credit.
Wonderful. Well, I'm just going to get started right away on our slides. If you registered through the library, you should have received a copy of them. If you'd like one after the fact, please let us know. We'll make sure to get a copy to you. I'm just going to forewarn you that the beginning of the slides is just all statistics. And if you're not a statistic person, I know that I usually am not. The visual still gives you the picture. So please don't glaze over. Please stay with us in the first few minutes of the presentation. It's all very valid, important information on what's going on with the housing market, showings, days on market, prices, all stuff that you may want to know about as a potential seller or a potential buyer in this market. So let me take a minute to share my screen. I've never shared a slideshow, so hopefully we'll be good. All right, so we have a different picture than when we spoke in February, February at the library, just a little bit modified because of the current situation that's going on right now. What I'm going to show to you, we have, first of all, we've been deemed, Jean and myself and other people in the housing industry as essential workers because of our ability to provide individuals and families with housing. It's something that helps the economy keep it stable, and we were considered essential. So we're still working during this. However, of course, our jobs are not going as they usually would. Spring markets are usually hustling and bustling. So as you can imagine, it's a little bit different. So we've just adapted and shifted. You can't stop the waves, but you can learn how to surf. And that's what we're doing. We're trying to figure things out right now. What I'm going to show you first are weekly snapshot changes that are in our MLS. So some of you who've ever looked for houses, you've done a search, it's pulled through an aggregate of information, the multiple listing service, where everybody puts their listings in. This is as of just May 11th, so it's current. All data is drawn from Midwest Real Estate Data, which is MRED or MLS. We're comparing weeks from February 24th, from when things started, to about May 11th. And we're comparing this year to last year, so you can see what the differences are. All MRED MLS data is for Illinois, but it's not for the entire state. It's only for those areas that participate. Some of the areas that participate in this database are the Chicago area, going all the way to the northern suburbs, and down south it has some of Bloomington Normal and some of Champaign. So it's a lot of Illinois data that's aggregate here. What this first slide shows you is that all the listings in March, the total number of listings were about 65.5. You'll see on the far right, listings that are temporarily pulled off the market. This doesn't include anything that was in our private listing network on the MLS, but temporarily off the market, what people started doing and what we were allowed to do during this was to, if someone had their home listed and didn't want people inside, or we needed to figure out how best to do a virtual tour of the home, people put their homes on temporary, which stopped the days on market ticking. So you'll see that it went from 65,000 total listings in March to 64,000 in May. Usually it would go up because that's what the spring market does through about July to August. And you'll see that the number of listings that went to temporary also increased towards the end of the data. Oh, I apologize. I need to fix something here so I can see the slides. Okay. The reason I thought that this was such valuable data, even though it's not just Schomburg area, is the fact that it kind of shows you overall what's going on. So new listings added. We were on track for a stellar year. If you look at the beginning of the slide, you see that the new listings added outweighed the green. The blue outweighed the green, which meant this year was better than last year. And you'll see how it slowed, and especially slowed in the middle around the time that we were told that we were going to have the stay in place. Again, same with listings under contract. We were having a great beginning or end of our first quarter where it started slowing down towards the middle, but you see the good news is the uptick that's happening now. Things are getting a little more back to normal. People are now trying to figure out how to do the work as best they can and adapt and still allow showings and still have the listings and just make people comfortable to their level of what this situation means to them. went down. The prices actually went down too. You'll see that. Closed listings are also down, but I believe that once things progress a little bit more, we are going to pick the market right back up. One thing I wanted to mention is that we weren't allowed as of April 1st to have open houses because of course we couldn't have people into the home. And so a lot of people got creative. We are still out there doing open houses. A lot of people are doing Facebook Live open houses, agents, or virtual open houses where they have time slots where they advertise that they will start a new showing at every half an hour between like 9 and 10. So there'll be 3 different showings of the home so people can log in and watch it live. So people are getting very creative, and I find that very interesting. As we adapt, we find different ways to do our jobs and maybe even better ways to do our jobs, or at least something to give us other options in case we need it. Now, the impact on showings, you'll see they drastically dropped at the end of March, but now they've normalized themselves back out again, coming back up. Of course, people are allowed to go in to see vacant homes, but if someone is living in a home, a lot of people are not showing their houses, and they are allowing people to first see a virtual tour, and then if they're interested, they can come in and actually schedule an in-person showing. It has become normal for people to be so excited about a house that on a showing or a second showing or a showing like that, they're bringing family. They're bringing a lot of people to the showings. And at this time, there are no more than 4 people allowed in the house at one time. That is governed by the state. So of course we try to do the virtual showings, but regular showings are allowed. Adapting, for example, I had a few listings in the past month where the sellers are leaving the lights on, leaving the doors open, interior doors open, so that less people have to touch light switches and doorknobs. And there are also gloves and paper towels and soap and hand sanitizer so that everybody can feel comfortable, and shoe coverings. Unfortunately, I didn't get masks in time, but those are on order. Lots of people are using those now. So this is in the whole MLS. What you'll see is that the 2019 average rented price was lower than it is in 2020 when we get to the end here of May 11th. So that has rebounded. I wanted to just give you a definition of mean, average, median, and mode because of the slides. So I'll just leave that in there for you. You all have a copy of the slides. But the average is you add them all up and divide by the number that you added together. The mean is just the middle. So if there are 10 items, it's like the number 5. And mode is one, let's say there are 3 of the same number, that would be the mode. So now I'm going to the place that you really want to see, which is the Schomburg data. All data, again, is drawn from Midwest Real Estate Data. The slide information is taken from their InfoSparks platform. And we're comparing the month of April. I was able to pull April data, and we're comparing it from 18 to 19 to 20. So you can see the change. Now this is in Schomburg for only detached single family resale homes. So we're not doing condos in this. I'm not doing any new construction in this. It's just single family detached homes that are being resold, just so you know, for the sake of information. So April homes for sale, you look at the difference between 2019 and 2020, barely even noticeable for the homes that are for sale. This is the current number from the MLS for the village of Schomburg, for Schomburg City, sorry, not the village. prices, you will see again, look, the prices are staying stabilized. They're even up a little from last year. What we're finding is people are thinking that they can leverage situations. Before this happened, it was a buyer's market in anything under 400, and over 400 it started to get to be, oh no, seller's market under 400, a buyer's market over 400 before this started. So some of the buyers think that they have leverage, thinking that sellers aren't going to sell their house, and that is not the case. Things are still going under contract quickly. Things are still having multiple offers, and things are still priced at the same price as they were priced at. They aren't falling as you would have seen back in the short sale days when the inventory was so high, people had to lower the price of their homes to get them sold. That's not the case right now. The average sale price is $340,350. That's of the average home in Schomburg. So you can see that went down minimally from last year. Oh, look, what says 0.05, 0.5%. Sorry, went up a little. Housing inventory. This is what makes something a buyer's market or a seller's market. So I just wanted to explain to you a little bit about absorption rate. That's what tells us how many months worth of inventory we have for a given market. So they calculate absorption rate by dividing the numbers of homes that sold over a given period of time by the total number of homes still for sale. So in understanding that, we have less new listings. We're down by 7% in our new listings. And months supply of homes for sale. We only have 3. Now that's pretty even to what we had last April, even though it says it's down from last April in the number of homes. So we've got 3 months worth of homes. And with people, if people are holding back their listings and not putting them on, you could see as a seller, if it's a good time for you, and if you're comfortable listing and you find somebody who can coordinate to your comfort level to get it marketed and to get it on the market and shown, it's a good time to list your house. Days on market. I just want to explain a little bit about days on market. There's such a thing as cumulative days on market, which is your total time on market. And there's days on market for this single listing. A lot of times realtors will take something off the market and put it back on, especially with this temp status now that we're allowed to use. Cumulative days will tell you the total number of days it's been on the market. But during this market, it's a little tricky because the temp status is not counting as cumulative days. So if someone took their house off the market on March 21st to just put it in temporary status and brought it back on at May 11th, those days from March 21st to May 11th would not count in the accumulation, just so you know. So the average total market time has gone up a little bit from last year. Not terrible though, from 59 days to 65 days. The average list to contract, meaning the time you put your house on the market and you actually get a signed contract in this area, it's about a month, 32 days, not bad. And from the time the contract's signed to time the closing is, it's 44 days. So the same as last year. Typically we say 45 to 60 days to close. Well, there are lenders who can do it in shorter amounts of time. That's typical. And now there's some challenges to that. So Jean will talk about that when we're done with these slides. Currently under contract, we have 443 homes, which is only 8 homes less than last year, difference of 1.8%. Closed sales are up 4%, 473 homes in April. when your house is sold, this is another way we're adapting. So I just wanted to let you know a little bit about that. You will find now that there's virtual notary services because there's a lot of in-person things that aren't going on anymore. Municipalities, lots of their buildings and offices are closed. So we have to schedule appointments to go pay a final water bill, to get your transfer stamps, and maybe schedule inspections. And they're actually doing drive-up closings at the title companies, where the title company will run out a packet, have a great sheet of instructions on what to do. You'll be on the phone with your attorney, or sometimes your attorney standing outside the car to instruct you on what the documents are you're signing. Or in some cases, the attorney actually has your power of attorney to be able to sign on your behalf. So again, we're shifting and adapting to try and make everything work so that this doesn't become a bottleneck and an issue. I just wanted to let you know also that there is something we called list price to sale price ratio. If you look at that, it has remained very steady in Schomburg, 2018 to now. It's the same. So that means if you list your house for $100,000, you are most likely going to get $96,200 by this slide. So you're going to get 96.2% of your asking price. Now that I've talked so much, I'm going to have a drink of water and let Gene take it away. He's going to talk about a lot of the things that we've been seeing on Facebook to clarify them for you. And if you have any questions, again, please make sure to just type them out in the questions section. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda. A lot of awesome information there about Schomburg and just real estate in general. So we'll talk a little bit about you're probably hearing or seeing this word forbearance. If you have a mortgage right now, you will probably understand it a little better. If you don't, I'll try to explain it a little bit. So a forbearance is basically when you can't afford to make your mortgage payment because you're laid off or in a furlough. Maybe you are in the hospital because you've caught something and you can't make your mortgage payment. So the mortgage companies are now offering what they're calling a forbearance, which means you can forego your mortgage payments right now for 3 months, and then they'll make a determination later if you need to go further. But what they will do is in 3 months, they will allow you to either pay the 3 payments that are due. They will set up a repayment plan for you, or they could possibly modify your mortgage and or put the additional money that you owe on the back of your mortgage. Now, the challenge with this, and this would really only apply if you currently have a mortgage, is that there's no money going into your escrow account. So at some point, your mortgage payment is going to go up because they still have to pay your tax bill. B, even though they tell you that it's not going to affect your credit, it will still show up on your credit as a forbearance. And mortgage companies don't want to lend to people that are in a forbearance or have had a forbearance because they're nervous about it. So if you want to refinance, that could stop you from being able to refinance. So there's some big ramifications to a forbearance. However, if you really desperately need it, it is a great way to still be able to keep your house. The challenge that's happening right now is that people are not being told that there could be a possible issue in the future for you, and they're just being allowed to go into a forbearance even if they don't need it. They're seeing things on the news and just deciding, hey, if it's available, I might as well. Why not skip 3 payments? But when they call their mortgage company, they're not being told of what happens afterwards. They're just saying, click 1 if you want to enter, or click 2 if you want to enter the forbearance. So it's a major issue. Now, the reason why mortgage companies reason why this is affecting mortgage companies and purchases is because they're fearful, underwriters and investors are fearful that when you purchase a property that you might enter into a forbearance program. So that's why right now they're really scrutinizing people's income, and we're having to provide continual verifications of employment throughout the process. So you're maybe hearing for the first time the word furlough. Technically, or well, historically, it's really been used more for flight attendants, people like that. So a furlough is when you're, as you see in the graphic there, you're still employed. If someone calls up and asks if you're employed, they will say yes, but they're on furlough, which means you're not actually working, may or may not be getting paid. The layoff is when they tell you, you know what, we're not going to be employing you anymore, but we're keeping you on file because we want you to come back in 2 months or 3 months or 4 months. And a furlough, you're expected to return to work. You may have a return date, or they may just be telling you, we don't know when you're going to return, but it will be, you have a job. You don't get your paid time off or vacation, given to you on a furlough like you do on a layoff. Layoff, they'll pay you out whatever is due to you. You may have a reduced amount of hours during your furlough. You may still be working a little bit, or when you return, you may only be on a certain amount of hours until things get back in. Where a layoff, you're not working at all. You can apply for unemployment under both of those scenarios, so that's a good thing. And with a furlough, you may or may not have health care benefits. It depends on your company's. Most companies will continue to pay your benefits, or you can continue to pay your benefits. If you're laid off, you can go on to a COBRA policy. Usually, it's going to be. I'm not an insurance person for health insurance, but usually you go onto a COBRA for a certain period of time until you find another job or get your own insurance. So mortgage credit availability right now has been tightened up a little bit. They're the underwriters are very concerned with what may happen in the future. They are really cracking down on what types of programs are being offered and credit scores. The programs for people that have a hard time verifying their income are considered high risk programs, and those have pretty much gone away. Some of the programs that we would use for self-employed, they are very nervous about self-employed borrowers right now because they want to make sure that these self-employed people that might not have a pay stub, that they're still doing business. So we're needing to get verification from clients, from their accountant, different places like that, checking their website, make sure it doesn't say that they're closed. We're having to do a lot more research on their employment for self-employed people. This doesn't mean that lending is completely stopped at all. Money is still available. It's a little bit harder for people with the lower credit scores. When you start getting below 640, it used to be we can go down to 580, not a problem. Now the 640 is becoming the new temporary floor for most people, but they still can be done under 640. It's just a little more difficult, and they're a little more strict on it. So speaking of credit scores, FHA's minimum credit score technically is 580. They've kind of raised that. Some companies have raised that, some underwriters to 640, some to 660, some to 680, and some to 700. There still are investors and underwriters that will underwrite under 640, but you're looking at a much higher interest rate, and it's all about risk. They feel you're a higher risk to go into forbearance if your credit scores are lower. And that's not based on any experience, because this has never happened before. It's only based on hypothetical future situations, and the investors are real nervous. If you have a better credit score, they are much more willing to lend you at a lower interest rate because they feel you're less risk. And that's one thing that I will help people do, is try to figure out how to get those credit scores up so you can get that better interest rate. Now, this affects more FHA right now than conventional loans. So interest rates right now for higher credit scores are really, really amazing. Low threes, upper twos. There hasn't been very many times in history where they've been this or lower. Technically, they should be lower. However, the investors are really nervous about what's going on right now, and they're having to just scramble to find money and to lend it out. FHA is even worse because they're even more nervous, and FHA people that are in FHA have a higher default rate, so they're, regardless of credit score, considered a higher risk regardless. But interest rates, if you have the higher credit scores, they're still phenomenal, and a lot of people are going from a 30-year into a 15-year, or they're purchasing with a 15-year, and it's just, I can't believe how low rates are right now. It's amazing. Here are some websites about the coronavirus and HUD and how they're treating things. I believe you're getting a copy of all this, right, Linda? Yeah. So I'll give you a little bit about how HUD is looking at it.
I know that there was one other thing that I was hoping that you would cover, Jean, that I didn't hear you talk about. And that was, I know there was a lot of confusion around when the feds said that the interest rate was going to 0%. And I received a number of emails and messages saying, oh my gosh, it's great. Mortgages are going to be 0%, because people didn't really understand it. And I know it's difficult to explain, but you've explained it to me so I can understand it. So I was hoping that you could share that with the people who may be watching now so that they understand it.
Yes, the Fed rate is very highly misunderstood. When the Fed lowers their rates, they're lowering the rates that banks borrow money at. And mortgage rates are based on the 30-year mortgage bond. So they're completely unrelated. They have nothing to do with each other. The Fed cannot control interest rates. They can influence them in a couple ways I'll talk about. But when the Fed lowers their rate and the banks are able to borrow money at a lower rate, they can then pass that savings along in the form of credit card interest rates, possibly car loans, and home equity lines of credit. Those are all variable interest rate programs, with the exception of the car loans. But with credit cards and home equity lines of credit, there is a calculation involved in determining what your interest rate is, and it's prime plus whatever. Prime is the Fed rate plus a little factor. I'm not sure where it's at right now. I didn't check today, but it changes, and that affects your interest rate on your credit cards and your home equity lines of credit, which is why sometimes you see that fluctuate a little bit every once in a while. So occasionally what happens is investors see that since banks have to pay a lower interest rate on the money they're borrowing, that means they may realize a greater return on their investment by not sharing all of that savings with the consumers, so they make a little bit more money. So what happens is investors that are investing in the bond market will take their money out of the bond market and put it into the stock market to capitalize on those gains. When money flows out of the bond market, specifically the 30-year mortgage bond, then that makes interest rates go up. As money flows back into the 30-year bond, then that makes interest rates go down. So normally we see a knee-jerk reaction a little bit where rates go up temporarily when the Fed lowers their rates. Now that's not always the case, but that does happen frequently. So it's a very interesting dynamic how these interest rates are done. What happened recently was rates went way down, and then once they realized that there's the possibility of the banks losing money with margin calls and various types of investments where they have to, keep enough cash in a certain type of an account. Mortgage rates went ahead and shot up because they weren't sure what was going to happen, and they got so busy as well. They wanted to slow their production a little bit. So interest rates, that's why I say interest rates aren't as low as I think that they should be, even though they're incredibly low. It's because I think they still have some little bit of artificial inflation because they're just so overwhelmed with business and they cannot hire people fast enough to handle all the business. Hope I didn't lose anybody.
So when you say business, are you talking about refinance?
Refinances, purchases, yeah. They'll prioritize purchases over refinances. So a refinance right now can take, 60 days. A purchase where we used to do a purchase and we used to be able to do a purchase in 2 to 3 weeks. Now we're looking at, 30 to 45 days, which is still below the average.
That's good. Well, and I heard that part of the change for you is having to verify employment up to 24 hours, right? Immediately preceding the closing now?
Right. That's one of the additional things that we have to do for verification of employment is within 24 hours, they want us to verify that the person is still employed and hasn't had their hours cut. We as a company have always within 48 to 72 hours pretty much verified that they were still employed with a verbal verification. But now we're just taking it a little step further to make sure that they haven't had their hours cut or there wasn't any kind of notification that they're going to be furloughed or laid off in the very near future.
So earlier you did mention the difference between furlough and layoffs, and that's what the concern is for a lot of home sellers right now, is that the buyer's financing is going to fall through. Have you run across a lot of that, or have you any good stories or anything you can tell to our audience about that?
I've had a few interesting scenarios. I think I have 3. I can give you a couple synopsises on. So I had one client that worked for a gym, and originally when he was furloughed, they told him that they would still be able to verify his employment and all that should be fine. But then when it came down to, right before the closing, the company said, no, sorry, we're not going to be able to verify his employment. Even though he was doing Zoom workout webinars, they were accumulating his hours. They just weren't generating a check for him yet. So what we had to do with them is, luckily he had a brother, actually a twin brother, that was able to co-sign for him. And we were able to close a little bit after that. Then I had another one that was working for one of the hat companies, baseball cap companies, as a retail manager. And when the whole shutdown started, he was still employed, so we didn't think it was be a problem. But then when they extended it, they decided that they weren't going to pay him anymore. They were going to furlough him and everything. So what we had to do for him is he got his mom and dad. We were trying to push the closing back, and we were pushing it back to the 15th of to this Friday, thinking that, well, maybe something will happen and maybe we'll have to extend it into June now. Well, he was able to get his mom and dad to co-sign for him, and we were able to put them on. And now we just got the clear to close today, and we're closing on Friday. So the buyers have no income.
Oh, goodness.
At all. And the mom and dad are co-signing. So, and they have reserves, they have money, they have, they can make the payments on their unemployment even. They're not overbuying. So that was a very pleasant scenario. And then I have another one where I always say everything happens for a reason. If your house that you're buying is meant to be, it'll be. Mm-hmm. And we were panicking a little bit, trying to figure out how we can go to the seller and let the seller know we need a little extra time because he's been furloughed and he's supposed to go back sometime in May, but they won't tell him when all of a sudden they contacted him and said, Well, the son contacted them and said, my mom and dad, who are the owners of the house, they are in a nursing home and we're not being allowed to get to them to sign any documents. So they asked us if we could postpone the closing for 60 days.
Wow.
So that was kind of a godsend per se for the buyers, because now he can get back to work. He's supposed to going back. They're still telling him in May, and then we'll be able to get it all together and close in I think it's July.
That's great. So I had a young, inexperienced realtor come up to me and he said, "Oh my gosh, there's so much going on. It's just so much chaos and drama." And I said to him, I just kind of laughed and I said, "Well, you know, that's not what that is at all. Every transaction is an outline of how things are supposed to go. You know what that outline is. Everything that happens in between is what we all call experience." So I'm very glad that you have a lot of experience, because you helped those buyers actually get through to the closing table, wherein a more unexperienced lender may not have those tools in their tool belt to try, to turn and pivot, right, and adapt to make it happen.
Oh, and I also did have another one now that I'm thinking about it. The second person on the loan worked for Mario Tricoci.
Yes.
And initially they also told her that they would verify her employment because she was actually doing one-on-one haircuts for people.
Okay.
But then once we got down to getting to the closing, they wouldn't do it. So we were able to take her income off as we had to. And then she had enough money, I think she might have gotten a gift, to pay off a vehicle. And then he qualified therefore on all with just his income, and we were able to close. So, that experience that you're talking about of being able to restructure things quickly and get things done so that the seller doesn't back out on you is key, I think.
Yes, very much so. Very much so. And that all has to do with then debt to income ratio, which we didn't really talk about here. I mean, that's in the normal home buying process, and that's not what we were covering tonight. But if you have any questions, of course, about the normal process for selling or for buying and for lending and mortgages, we're happy to answer those questions as well. I think that's about all that we had. And I'm not sure if there are questions that we need to field. I know that I think Patty, our moderator, was going to shoot those through to us. Patty, do we have any questions?
Hi, Linda. You know what? I'm looking and I'm not seeing that we have any current questions from our participants on Zoom or on YouTube. I'm sharing contact information for both you, and I was about to grab it from Home Trust for Jean in case anyone wanted to reach out to you after tonight. But let's just give it one more minute. And Jean, I really appreciate the stories that you shared, because I know that they are true to life and they're also very reassuring. Unfortunately, when you have a disappointment, why a closing isn't going so smoothly, there's usually very good grounds for that. And so to have a team, your real estate agent and your real estate attorney and your mortgage representative, when you have a really good solid team that you trust on that, that's absolutely key. So just grabbing Jean's information here.
I do see a question. It would be one for Jean, and it's could you please share how they calculate how much mortgage someone can afford?
That's a great question, and it has many answers. The challenge that I feel is in the mortgage business, not as much now as it has been in the past, but mortgage people forget about what a purchaser or what a buyer should afford. And I don't want to say they push them, but they encourage them to purchase what they can on paper afford. So I look at it from two different ways. I figure the maximum amount that you can purchase, and then that might be a higher mortgage payment than you really want. So we'll back it down to what gets you to the price that you're comfortable with on a mortgage payment. Because most people don't realize that you don't get pre-approved based on the price of a house. You get pre-approved based on the payment. You could have a $200,000 house that has a higher payment than a $250,000 house based on taxes and insurance and whatnot. So we have general guidelines that we use when we qualify somebody with what we call debt ratios. So it's your gross income, and we take your overall debt. So whatever your new mortgage payment would be, and your credit cards and your car loans and installment loans that would show up in your credit report, we take that cumulatively and divide it by your gross income. So there's a couple different loan programs, FHA and then conventional. Those are the two most popular. Conventional allows you to go up to either 45% of your gross income, or sometimes, depending on your scenario, 50%. Whereas FHA will allow you to go up to 55% of your overall gross income for your overall debt, but they cap your mortgage debt on a monthly basis at 47% of your gross income. Now, it doesn't, just because you have the credit score requirements or you fit into that box, it doesn't mean you automatically can get a loan. We have to then run you through an automated system and make sure Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac's, and FHA's automated system is comfortable with your overall picture, being your debt, your pay history, your income, your job stability, and whether or not you have money left over after you purchase the home. Personally, I like to see people have money left over after they purchase. You might need to buy appliances. There's furniture. I'd rather not see you go into debt to buy furniture. So we do everything we can to make you comfortable with the whole transaction of itself. And everybody's a little bit different. There really are no two alike. We're all like, snowflakes. No two are alike. Every scenario is going to be a little bit different. And you just never know when there's something that might be running in the background of your credit that we can't see, that an automated system will pick up. And if you go ahead.
Okay. Sorry, thought you were done.
No, I was just going to say, I could always, run through calculations and things like that for anybody who wants it.
Okay.
We have two more questions. Oh, I'm sorry, Linda, go ahead.
Sure. I was just going to say that when I have buyers, I always make sure too that you have to have a pre-approval as part of your contract offer, actually. So we'll need that step. Gene is very good at working with me, at telling me, because he knows what your payment should be, how much the taxes should be, what price range we're looking in, if there are association dues or fees that are included, so that that final payment comes out to what you're comfortable with, not what you qualify for, but what you're comfortable with, because we don't want you stuck eating ramen noodles and peanut butter and jelly when you're done buying your house. We want to make sure that you are comfortable. So
you're my two favorite though.
Go ahead.
The next question that we have, Jean, is are they still doing appraisals on home, and how do they do it with COVID in mind?
Oh, wow. That is a phenomenal question. A great. I wish more people would ask that question because it is interesting. So Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have come out with additional guidelines for appraisals now. So if someone's not comfortable with an appraiser coming into the house, which right now the appraisers are wearing masks and gloves and everything, but if you're not comfortable with it, we can do what's basically called a drive-by appraisal. There's all kinds of numbers associated with it, but for lack of confusion, we'll call it a drive-by appraisal. So the appraiser will do the same amount of work with the exception of the 10 or 15 minutes that they're in the property. and taking pictures and things. Now there's positives and negatives to that. Positives obviously is that nobody's in your house. The negatives are you might have something in your house that you've done to the property that an appraiser might need to see to help better determine what your true value is on your property. If you bought the house, you didn't do anything to it, it's not going to matter. That could work to your advantage too. If you bought the house and something happened inside, now the appraiser is not going to see it either. So they have allowed for some easing of that. And they've also, for people that are, I haven't seen it too often or as often on purchases, but on refinances, if the value that we've entered as an estimated value matches or is lower than what the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac's automated system determines your approximate value to be, then they issue what's called an appraisal waiver, where we don't even have to do an appraisal on the property. So that's very interesting in of itself. So for the past years, all of our appraisals have been logged into a system, and this system has created this like a Zillow type system for Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And if you fall within the right guidelines or within the right value range, it won't be needed. Now, that also, I think, poses problems for the future, because 5 years from now, if they have a lot of that happening, they're not going to have the data to accurately depict a value, and we'll start needing to do appraisals again on properties that normally may not have had to have one.
This has
So yeah,
been
they do have, COVID is in their minds for sure, absolutely.
This has been why it's been so important for realtors to have pictures of their listing on the MLS. They're kept up for a certain amount of time so the appraisers can use them for comparables to look at other properties. Listing agent will get a call that the appraiser is trying to schedule the appraiser. It is the listing agent's job to fight for the valuation of the home per se. So that agent should be able to present or send to that appraiser a list of any updates or things that have been done that aren't the norm for that model, or things that make it possibly better. So features, they'd send a list of those to the appraiser. They could also send to the appraiser things that they feel are good comps for the home, so that they're not going outside of a subdivision. You know, here in our area in Schomburg and Hoffman Estates, we have so many subdivisions in and out of each other that you want to make sure that the appraiser is staying in the same subdivision, because sometimes that appraiser is not from our area at all and wouldn't know that High Point and the Highlands and the Pie are all 3 different areas, but they're all within a mile of each other. You find a lot of that. So the agent fights for that right. One of my listings that went under contract during this, the appraiser came in and he just was wearing mask and gloves. The seller was there and I was there. So it all depends again on people's comfort levels and what they want to do. But they are allowed to, you know, if they don't want to allow access, the appraiser will do a drive-by. They'll get out of the house and actually still do the exterior measurement for total square footage. They may peek in through windows and kind of do things like that. They're missing that conversation sometimes with the agent who would normally be there to meet them, but it doesn't mean that can't happen over the phone and the information can't still be sent. While they prefer to use their own pictures, the appraiser will take their own pictures versus using a listing agents that are on the MLS. They will at times ask the seller themselves to take pictures of things inside the house and submit them. I don't know, they trust the seller over the listing agent that the pictures haven't been doctored or changed in any way, because you have seen things before in pictures that are virtually staged and virtually changed. I hope that answers your question.
We have 2 more questions. How accurate is realtor.com versus the MLS, and is the information the same? Can you still bid on a home that has a contingency?
Oh, that's a whole slew of questions. So realtor.com, I would say if you're going to use an outside website, is the best one to use, because it does pull the IDX feed more frequently than others. Some of the other websites that are out there are really used as marketing tools to sell realtors leads of buyers and sellers. And so they don't keep their data up to date, because if something doesn't show as contingent and is shown as available to the public, then that's one more name that that website can hang on to. So realtor.com is a great one to use. Let's see, what was the second part of your question? I have it in the question box here.
Can you still bid on a home that has a contingency?
Thank you. Yes. So when a property changes to contingent status, it is up to the seller to decide if they still want to show it. Many agents won't show things that are contingent because they don't want a buyer to get their heart set on something that they may not have a chance of purchasing. But yes, you can still put an offer in on a contingent property. All offers must be submitted to the seller unless the seller has stated in writing that they don't want any more offers. So up until close, all offers must be presented. I have a legal obligation to present all offers to my seller. There are some contingencies that would make it beneficial. There are some times that I show contingent properties, and it's when it's a home sale contingency that a buyer has, or a home close contingency that a buyer has. That leaves the door a little bit more open for my buyer to maybe squeak their foot in the door, because there are more hoops that buyer needs to jump through to be able to make it to close. So yes, I hope that answered your question. You are still able to make offers on contingent homes.
Linda, this is Patty. I'm going to come back
Yes.
for a second. We do have one more question, but before we get to that, I have a question based on the previous one. Can the potential buyer ask what type of contingency it is before they place their offer? Can they ask if it's a home sale contingency?
Yes, your agent should be able to discern that from the markings in the MLS, whether or not it's contingent just on the attorney review period, if it's contingent on the mortgage period, so that it's getting towards the end of that contract, whether or not it's a home close or a home sale contingency. All of those should be able to be ascertained by your agent as a buyer.
Okay. And then the last question that I see is, can you buy a house if the buyer does not have a job? And I think, Jean, you've addressed this to some degree.
Yeah, yes. That's kind of a tricky question. If they don't have any other income or any other assets, then unless they have a co-signer, then no, they cannot, because they would not be able to afford it. However, if they have Social Security income, trust income, other types of income, they could use that income to qualify. Or if they have, some people have millions of dollars laying around, and we can convert that to potential income on a monthly basis and use that income to qualify you, even though you might not be taking a specific amount per month. So there's there's a couple different scenarios that if you don't have a job, you can buy a house. But if you don't have any other assets or income, then you would not be able to. And they would question, of course, if you don't have any income or job coming in, why would you want to have a mortgage payment, or how would you pay it? If you had somebody else living there with you, maybe they can go on the loan with you, or someone could co-sign for you. There's various reasons why you might, but basically you would need to have some income coming in, but not necessarily a job.
Okay, well, I think you've wrapped up every question. I'm checking our YouTube live stream at the same time, and I haven't received any questions going in there, but we do have a few viewers from YouTube, which is where it will be recorded, and it'll be out there for the next 2 weeks. For those attendees that I had individually sent you the Zoom link earlier today, You will also see that I sent you a feedback sheet, an evaluation form. If you could take some time and fill that out and then email it to Linda. Those were, I think there were maybe 8 questions on there that will just give us some good commentary on what you were able to receive from tonight's presentation. Also, my email address is on the chat. It was all the way at the beginning. If you have any suggestions as patrons of our library, as far as program topics that you would like to see our library offer, please just jot me a note. It doesn't even have to be under my specific purview of business. If it's something that you would like to see the library address, we will certainly give it some attention and hopefully be able to oblige. But Linda and Jean, I'm so very glad that you were able to come back and spend some time with us and give us an update. I found it very valuable.
Thanks for having us.
Right.
And you also have an event coming up. Did you?
Oh,
I think it was
put the
the
slide up.
last Wednesday.
We have the last Wednesday of every month. We do this for the community as well. We had been typically doing it at the Hoffman Estates Park District Tri-Pond Center, but that is currently closed. So Jean and I will be doing this type of question and answer webinar feature every month, the last Wednesday of the month. So if you want to get more answers, if you want to come to another group setting where it's not one-on-one, feel free to attend. You could call either of us and we can give you the Zoom information.
Wonderful. Well, I want to thank you so very much for being the presenters for tonight and also for all that you do for the community. You are active members of the Hoffman Estates Chamber and other chambers as well, and always on the front line when the library needs to partner for a lot of our events. So thank you both. And we're going to wrap up tonight unless I see any other questions come in, and I don't.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everyone.
Take care.